Hi guys!
Hi!
We are back. I know it's been a while. We've had a lot of things going on, but we're here to kind of catch up and get this thing done because we really want to get it done this week if possible.
Yes, really.
Alright, so we're going to show you a couple things that we've done, you know, we haven't done any sewing or anything like that. All that stuff we're going to do on camera. But we did go and find some jewelry. We went out of town this weekend to Atlanta and went to this store that had some jewelry. And we found some jewelry. So you want to show them the necklace that you're going to be wearing? This is the necklace and the earrings that she's going to be wearing. Alright, so she has a strapless dress, and we thought that'd be really pretty, you know, against her skin, because the strapless dress will come to, you know, right above the bust. So we think that'll fall really, really pretty. Here's the earrings, and here's the necklace. And it's gorgeous. It really is gorgeous. So like we said, we're going to try to get this done this week. Not today.
No,
this week. Yeah, this week, so that we can get her pictures done for her pictures that'll be in the room the day of the night of the Sweet 16. Yeah. Alright, let's get started. So, today we're going to be cutting the lining.
Yes.
We're going to be cutting the slip ruffle. The lining is the only thing that we're going to have to use the pattern pieces for. The slip ruffle, we'll get into that in a minute about how we'll cut that. But the first thing you're going to see us do is cut the lining out. So 1, 2, 3.
4, 12, and 11.
Alright, so those are the pieces that we cut. And we already have one laid down here that we'll show you. We'll get started. You kind of know how the process works. Now, as far as the fabric goes, the two fabrics that we will be cutting today is lining, which you can see here. This is lining. It almost feels like tablecloth material.
Yes.
It's real slick on the skin. It's really used to protect your skin from the other fabric. So this is lining. When you go to the fabric store, you actually have to look for the lining area, or the area that that they sell the lining at, because that's what we were looking at, another area, and I was like, Jada, this lining looks like regular fabric. It does not look like regular cloth. It is not cloth.
Thank goodness we have the lady there to help us.
Yes, always use your lady at the fabric store, because they know more about it, usually. Sometimes you get people that don't know anything and they just kind of feel their way through. Yeah. But we, usually they know stuff, so the lady did tell us where the lining was. We did find a lining. Now, it doesn't really matter what color your lining is, because it's actually going up under her dress. And I know you remember the dress before, or the fabric before, which is royal blue satin. If you haven't seen it, you'll see it later on in the video, or you can go back and watch some of our past videos. Yes. So we don't have to worry about this showing through, because that is darker material and our overlay is lace, so this won't show. So it doesn't really matter what color you're doing your lining unless you have more of a see-through material. We also will be cutting the slip ruffle. Now this is the material that we'll be using for the slip ruffle, and all it really is netting. That's what it is netting. And what the slip ruffle is for, the slip ruffle. What do we use the slip ruffle for?
To make the skirt go poof.
Stand out. So it's stiff. We looked up and found the right inches. We had to have 54-inch width, which is the width of it. So we found 54 inches, and we have to cut 20-inch squares, or 20-inch rectangles, to go on the under part of the dress. So netting, if you're going to do some type of under slip ruffle, the best to use is netting. The only thing you should use is netting. And they come in different types. You have the ones with the bigger holes, which aren't really good in my opinion for sewing. And then you have the ones that have really, really small holes, but they aren't good either to me, because they're real flimsy.
And
so
they don't really stand out.
Yeah, they don't stand out. So we got kind of in between. The holes are small enough on this that you can sew through it, or you can sew and it'll stay, and they're not so small that it's just not flimsy. So I think it has a good stiffness to it. All right, so we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
You ready? Ready to get started cutting?
I'm so ready.
I am too. I'm ready to get this dress done.
Me too.
And see how it looks on you.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
Hey, Gina.
the bodice side back, and this is the bodice back. And if you notice, you have one side that is not as shiny as the other side. This is the shiny side. Same thing with this side. You have a shiny side and a not so shiny side. So what we're going to do is put the two shiny sides, which are these, together. And we're going to sew them together. And then I'll show you the reason for that. And we're going to do it on stitch 1. So it's a pretty close stitch so it won't come apart. And I'm going to do about a 1/8 inch seam. And then what I always do when I get to the end is take the reverse button and do a reverse stitch and then come back. And the reason why I do that is so that it won't come loose. Alright, so like I said, I stitched the back part. I stitched both of the shiny sides together. And the reason why I stitched them together is so that you can come out with a nice seam just like that. See? Nice seam. Alright, so we have stitched the bodice side back. Both pieces of that. This is the bodice side back stitched with the bodice back. Bodice side front. These are the bodice side fronts right here on the side. And this is the bodice front. Alright, so now we're going to try to put all of it together. We have to sew. We have to gather the upper and lower edges of the bodice front between the stitch lines. So we will come back and show you how that looks. Alright, so we have the front bodice and we have started to do the overlay portion of it. And the reason I didn't film this is because it was a lot of us figuring out what we had to do. Like I said, instead of using tulle, we're using this beautiful lace. So what we did was we cut the pieces out originally first. And then what we had to do was take the front bodice piece for the overlay, sew it. What I had to do was sew it in on the edges, because you had two seam lines. You can see those on the back. You had a seam line here and a seam line here. I had to match those seam lines with the overlay piece. So what I did was took the piece, put a pin here on the seam line, and then stretched it to the end and put a pin here on the seam line. Then I came over to this side and I put a pin here on the seam line and a pin here on the seam line. Then I sewed those down. Sewed it here to the seam line and sewed it here to the seam line. When I got in the middle, I had a lot of I had more fabric than I had more of the overlay than I had of the under fabric, the satin piece. So what I had to do with the overlay was bunch it together. Now the way you bunch, or the way you gather, I call it bunching, but it's actually a technical term, it's called gathering. Now, when I gathered, first I took my piece of fabric, laid it on my on my sewing machine, and put my stitch all the way to the end. Now your sewing machine may be different. My sewing machine goes from a very short stitch to a very large stitch. The larger stitch is what you want to use for gathering. So I took my needle, I took my setting and moved it all the way to the biggest stitch. That makes a loose stitch so that you can pull it at the end. Alright, once I did that, I ran a stitch all the way from one end of my overlay to the other end of my overlay before I sewed it down. And then I just pulled it. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that same method on the bottom portion of it. If you can see on this bottom portion of it, I've already sewn down my two ends from here to here, as well as from here to here. So all that's left open is this piece right here in the middle. Now I've already taken my stitch on the highest stitch and I've sewn from one end of the fabric to the other end of the fabric. Then I've taken the pieces that are left out on the end and I just pull, and you see how it bunches it together as I pull? That's all I had to do to create a gathering effect. Now what we're going to show you that I'm going to do is sew the very last piece down. I'm just going to take it and then lay it as flat as I possibly can for my sewing machine and stitch from this end to this end. Now keep in mind this is already stitched together, so I don't have to stitch the end pieces. That's the easiest way for me to do gathering so that I can keep up with what is what, line it up. I pin it down first, then I stitch, pin this part down, then I stitch. Just a straight stitch. There's no gathering to this. You see, no gathering. Then I do the same here, but I do a loose stitch from here to here on just the overlay. And then we take the pieces that are left out at the end and just pull it so that we gather it. Next, we're going to show you how to lay that down while you stitch. So, I have stitched down the bottom piece, and as you can see, it's gathered the effect that we want, and it's only gathered in the middle, and the side pieces are just laid flat down. Alright, so we finished the bottom portion, and what we had to do with the bottom portion basically was, instead of gathering in the top like I showed you here in the top where we gathered from here to here going this way, we gathered long ways. We gathered along the waistline. So we created a gather in the middle here. Now when this is pulled tight, it will have almost like a ripple effect. Alright, so we did the same thing as we did with the top, but we did it along the sides. This piece was much bigger than the bottom piece, so what I did was just take the top piece and gather it together using my gathering stitch first, pulling it tight, and then gather. Now don't worry about all these edges here, because once you sew on the back bodice, all that will tuck under. Alright, right now this is just the front piece.